The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
And this is live from the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, an ongoing series about the benefits of podcasting. And now, here's your host, David Garofalo.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is a 21-minute or less weekly podcast to help you get your message out, grow your business, and build your bottom line. Let me help you bring your marketing and advertising into the 21st century. My name is David Garofalo. I've been doing podcasting since 2010. I built a business around it, the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, along with my own podcast. My podcast alone has created a six-figure income, and I'm here to help you do the same for you and your business. So today we're going to talk about Vodcast. That's video on demand cast. Why add video to your podcast? It's a 21-minute podcast or less, so let's start the clock now. And here we go. Vodcast. Why add Vodcast to your podcast? Is it still a podcast if you add video to it? And the answer is yes, but it has included now a podcast. So you're going to have both going on at the same time, video on demand. And you can find us on YouTube. If you listen to this podcast and you didn't know that it includes a vodcast, you can go to YouTube and simply find Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, and you'll see the show there. Not a lot of viewers, I'll be honest with you. You're going to click on there and you're going to see not a lot of viewers compared to the amount of listeners that we have on the show, I'm proud to say. And you're honestly not going to get a lot of viewers on your vodcast also. But there's a lot of reasons that you want to do it. You want to create more listeners on your podcast, and having a vodcast will do that, and we'll explain why you're going to do that and why it's very important. It can be complicated. It sounds complicated to do, and it can be, but I'll tell you, it's worth adding it to it, and I'll explain that, even if nobody's watching. It doesn't matter. It's going to help you one way or the other, and we're going to get to that today on Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. You can simply record video of yourself doing a podcast. Put that video, it has its own as you're recording it, the own microphone that's built into it, an external microphone that's on what you're recording that onto, and you're all set, and you have a vodcast. You load that up, and you're all set. The quality most likely is going to be a tough quality audio, but I'll tell you, it's better than nothing. Putting something out there is better than nothing. But in this case, I would want to show more of a, especially if it's a business, a more professional look to it, because you want to come off as a professional yourself. So somebody gets a chance to peek behind the curtain, basically. You actually want to show something that looks nice. That's why we created the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, that we're here, and it's a pretty neat looking, if you go onto the vodcast, you go onto YouTube and look at it, you'll see a nice looking desk, a backdrop, well lit, along with a producer that's on the side, actually making sure the sound is right, maybe changing camera angles. So here we are at this camera angle, or we can go back to the full set over here, and there's a close-up camera. You can do that if you want to even make it better. Or, as I said, you can just simply have an iPhone recording it, a tablet, anything, some kind of camera that's picking up the audio also. And make yourself a little backdrop or something so it looks nice. If you're manning the equipment yourself, tidy up a little bit, because you don't want to look lousy. You want to look professional as the best you can. And there are simple ways to actually improve the quality of the audio, and that is to run the audio out of your recording device into the video recorder, so that it will capture better audio as opposed to the external mic that's happening there. Again, a little complicated if you're completely doing this yourself, but there's a lot of good reasons why you want to do it, and I'm going to get to that now. Another thing is you can go to a podcast or vodcast studio. like the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe or other places out there across America, across the world that is now adding podcasting studios into their makeup of what they are, even radio stations that are doing this. We're doing it here at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, and here we do everything for you. So you simply bring your information, your talent, your information of the subject you're bringing on. If you're local, I highly recommend you come down here, visit us, and let us show you what we can do to add vodcasting to your podcast. And as I say, I think it's very important, and we're going to get to all that. Vodcasting will bring your show to the next level, to another level. Again, even if not a lot of people are watching that. So let's assume now you have recorded your podcast and you have added the video to it, and you did it just by the external mic or whatever you did. Maybe you plugged into it and you got the audio a little better. Either way, it's time to post your vodcast. You have to put it somewhere like you do your podcast, and you're going to take that video file of the show and turn it into a vodcast. So where do you post it? What do you do with it? You have that video file now. Where do you want it? The answer is you want it everywhere. As we talked in the last episode, where to post your podcast. This time, we're adding the vodcast. Where do you want to do that? So you post your podcast everywhere you can. Now you have the vodcast file. What do you do with that? You're going to post it everywhere you possibly can. You want it to be seen on YouTube for sure, right? Other places you may want to put it on is Vimeo, Vimeo, Daily Motion. These are places that you can use their player. In other words, drop it in there, and the player that plays is all on their site. It makes it easy for you. Also, there's video management tools on there where you can see stats. You can go live right onto those platforms, or not. You don't have to go live, but you could go live if that's what you wanted to do. You can use and share those links once they're up on their platform onto things like Facebook or other social media. There are some others. Break, if you have a comedy show, Break is a good one. Also Crackle for comedy. You'll notice a lot of certain things go into certain places, and they'll be much found better in those places. But again, I'd put it everywhere you possibly can. Flickr, that's Flickr, is great for social media. Metacafe, Engage Media, VEOH, Show Me Do, great for video tutorials. Show Me Do if you're doing tutorials on different products and subjects. And remember MySpace? Remember that? Well, it's still out there. And it's great to post your videos onto. You get your MySpace, and you can post it on there. So some of these things don't go away. They just evolved into something different. You have a podcast, and you want to get it heard by more people. That's the whole idea, right? So the answer here is add video to get it heard by more people. Yes, add video and get more people listening to your podcast. And not necessarily watching your podcast, but listening to your podcast. Or in some cases, you're going to get some people that the vodcast, the YouTube is the best for them, and they have their computer at work or their computer at home, which is where they're watching the vodcast. And that's good. You're going to add people to it. But really, by posting it up on a video platform, especially something like YouTube, Google loves it. Google, the search engine, will push your podcast up simply because you have a vodcast. It's going to generate more to the search engine optimization of it, and more people are going to see it, hear it. YouTube is the second largest search engine, only to Google. And YouTube is the #1 place for social media. So video is getting very, very important, and Google actually owns YouTube now. So getting your content on YouTube automatically will improve your Google ranking. And because it's so big on social media, Facebook will move it to the very top. Facebook loves video content, and the word is a couple of years from now, Facebook is only going to be accepting video content. And imagine if you act now and you start getting all this video content up there. How ahead of the game this is going to make you. And how about the hearing impaired or the deaf? It's automatically closed caption for the hearing impaired. So by doing your vodcast, they just click something in there that's going to easily take them into, they want to have the words written down. It's going to pick up your words. It's automatically going to be for the hearing impaired. Now, 15% of Americans 18 years and older, that's actually 37 million people, have hearing impairments. 37 million extra people that maybe choose that option as opposed to listening to a podcast because they're hearing impaired or totally deaf. This is their only option. So why would you not want to bring this into them to be able to see the words that you're saying? So again, vodcasting, adding video to your content is very, very important. And how this only can make it so it's not just so that you can watch the podcast, but to be able to share it. And you can actually have it even showing up on smart TVs now that on their big screens, they can actually watch your vodcast while at home on the big screen. And believe it or not, you can start making money with it. And we're going to get to that in just 1 minute. So let me take 1 minute out for you to hear about the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe.
If you're in the area of Boston North into southern New Hampshire and you're thinking about doing a podcast, there is a place you have to see. It's called Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Located right over the border into Salem, New Hampshire, Studio 21 Podcast Cafe is a live, working, full-service podcast and vodcast, that's video on demand, studio. All professional equipment, professional producer, and total distribution of your podcast is done for you. Would you like search engine optimization for more people to find your business or better ranking on Google? Well, Studio 21 Podcast Cafe can do it all for you for far less than you think. Schedule a free 21-minute no-obligation consultation by going to www.studio21podcast.cafe. That's studio21podcast.cafe. Now, back to the program.
And we are back, and today we're talking about vodcasting, video on demand, and why you want to add video to your podcast. So we're at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, and it is just that. It is a podcast studio, Studio 21 Podcast, but it's also a cafe. So if you want a great cup of coffee, come on up, and you can have a cup of coffee while you're watching somebody else doing their podcast. So, there's nothing better. While watching somebody else do a podcast, you're going to understand the ins and outs of it, and you can come here and watch and see how it's done. And before you know it, hopefully you get the bug, and if you're not doing a podcast now, you'll actually pull the trigger and do it. Instead of just waiting and waiting, I've been thinking about it. I hear it from a lot of people. I've been thinking about doing it for a long time. Just do it. Just start doing a podcast. Come on up. We'll walk you through it. I'll even buy you a cup of coffee, all right? So come up, make an appointment with me, and we'll talk about doing podcast and vodcasting, and we'll take your business to the next level. So today, we are talking about the vodcasting, the video on demand portion of this to take your business to the next level. So you're doing a podcast and there's no video. Confucius said it. It's a picture is worth 1,000 words, and you can see a podcast, and you can the person can get to know you as a person. They can see what you are, and if you're looking for clients and things like that, it's going to take you to you and your show to the next level, just like this one. So not that tough to do if you have somebody doing the work for you. Again, you're just bringing your information to it. But if you're doing it yourself, listen, we're going to help you along the way to do it yourself. We want to get you off the ground and get you going. So this podcast, as I told you, there's really nothing to see here. This is telling you how to do a podcast. And here I am sitting at a table. We try to make the background nice. We try to make it look as professional as we can. We put in a couple of different cameras in here so that the camera's going back and forth or something. But maybe your show has some sort of show and tell to it. This one doesn't, but I'm using the vodcast portion of it for for other reasons, for search engine optimization, for people to find me better than it is. There's really nothing to see here, but it's helping along the way anyway. So I want to really stress that point to you, that you're doing a podcast and you say there's nothing really to see. There's two people talking and we don't do anything. There's other reasons why you want to do that. And it's to get more people listening to your show. You may be doing it already, and you may want to improve the look of your vodcast, and that's what a studio is all about. If you don't want to do that and you want to continue to do it yourself, clean up your act, folks. If you're doing it in the basement, hang up a sheet, put a backdrop on, do something to improve it. That's the whole idea. You want to look as professional as you can. You may want to do this. Do a vodcast for a lot of different reasons, get more listeners in different places, as we talked about, that you're doing it all in these different podcast catches, that you want to catch a different person listening to something else. But all these vodcast places, there's people there, especially on YouTube, that are there that maybe don't know anything about your podcast. They'll find the vodcast, they'll now subscribe into your podcast, and I hope if you're catching this show for the first time and you're seeing it on a video platform, I hope you go to find Studio 21 Podcast Cafe on your favorite podcast catcher and subscribe to it. Why we do it is for better search engine optimization. That's why we're doing this show on it, so more people will find us. And how's this? To make money. Vodcasting has other possibilities for monetization, money, than others do. Today we learned that you can now record your podcast and simply add video, and you have a vodcast. We told you that you can post it and where to post it to the right places and where those places are. We also told you now you can start earning money with your podcast. So let's get to that. How do you earn money doing a vodcast as opposed to or additionally to the podcast? And this is done simply by enabling your channel, your video channel, whether it be on any of those platforms I mentioned to you, and have it set for monetization. Here's how you do it. Connect your, for instance, YouTube channel to AdSense account. It'll be right there. AdSense, AdSense account, in order to earn money and get paid for your videos. So 2 million people are doing it. More than 2 million people are doing it. Those stats came from 2015. The last stats that they have listed there is from 2015. This is 2018 right now that we're recording this. So you got to imagine it's more. But let's go with the low number of the 2 million people. And they paid out, get this, $10 billion in advertising. So if my math is correct here, it averaged to $5,000 per person. Did you get your $5,000? Because if you didn't, that means you're not doing it. So it's there for you. Again, you're going to find the right platform, take a minute and go through it and find the kinds of videos that you can monetize, the different ad formats that are there. Take a look. It's AdSense, and you can see it. And if it makes sense to have AdSense, you can simply add that to your vodcast. You can do it all, and you should do it all. And if you want to do it all, but you're not doing it all, we can do it all for you. So contact me at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe and let us do it all for you. Remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. These are just some of the reasons why you should add vodcasting to your podcast, and there are a lot more. And if you want to tell us some more that you know about, please message me or contact me at the Contact Us button on the Studio 21 Podcast.cafe. That's Studio 21 Podcast.cafe. Set up a meeting with me and let me show you Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. And as I said, I'll even buy you the coffee. So that's it. Next week, podcasters must train their listeners. Now, I'm not saying treat your listeners like a dog, but it's kind of like that. So that's my 21 minutes, and we are out of here. You've been listening to the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, live from the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe on the United Podcast Network.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.